Hello everyone and welcome to Alejandro HD. Today I wanted to address a subscriber who messaged me and asked me what type of music I actually listen to. This is following on from the King Gordy video that I recently just posted. And I thought that was a really all-encompassing question because they put a bit of context in there. They asked me to remain anonymous or I would show you the comment, but they wanted me to protect their anonymity. So basically they said, hey, at one point you were talking about Bullet from a Valentine. At one point, you're now talking about rap artists. What is, what do you actually like? What is your style? What do you listen to on a daily basis? And I thought to myself, that is a hard question, because I mean, as much as I can't play any instruments, I don't, but I love music, and it stems from sort of period of my life, when I was younger and then grew up, I was always surrounded by music. And I think what I thought to do today would be a sort of a timeline, a window into what things I actually enjoy. I've actually got Wikipedia up here just for references and for visual aids. So hip hop music is sort of where I grew up from. That's what sort of when I was younger. My mother sort of raised me on sort of Bob Marley, ska music, and then that sort of transferred into hip hop music sort of later on. Earliest stuff I remember listening to was like you say, Bob Marley, reggae, ska, UB40, things like that, and then moving more into hip hop music, the hip hop genre, Eminem, of course, and a bunch of like sort of just really random like West Coast rappers, early NWA, guys, Cypress Hill, like lots of hip hop groups. My mum used to have thousands, I'm talking thousands of cassettes. So she made me, well, not made me, but she played them quite a lot. So when I was younger, I used to listen to them, just picked it up. Although I think eventually my mum sort of realised that I was picking up a lot of words I probably shouldn't have been saying, so she sort of backed off a little bit from that. But yeah, so the earliest sort of youngest times I was listening to hip hop music, and when I was young enough to play the record or play the tape without pulling it apart or put it in my mouth, because I used to be quite bad at doing that. There's like chewing on things. So yeah, so that's sort of where the earliest forms stem from. Grown up and then sort of more sort of teenage years and move on to heavy metal music. So this is a really interesting one for me. As if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that the Bullet from a Valentine were the first sort of heavy band that I ever listened to, out with like the classic guys, the Metallicas, AC/DCs, Bon Jovi, guys like that, and because everyone knew who they were, like classic rock, like Queen and Led Zeppelin and stuff. You heard them, somebody listened to them on the radio, you knew their big songs and things like that. But it was really sort of when I was 14 or 13, like I say, I've done a video on that. You can check that one out about how I really sort of cracked the metal genre, and over time that sort of developed into heavier and heavier and heavier music. And there was a time in my life where I was actually listening to quite, like black metal, and things like that. And that sort of, but that was only a very small pocket, and then I ended up reverting back to that in nowadays stages. So it was really interesting to see how I went from that to there, like from one genre like rap, hip hop, to heavy metal. And of course you've got the bands like Rage Against the Machine, Limp Bizkit, bands that sort of transfuse these musical genres together. So it was really easy for me to transfer and to enjoy that type of music. There's System of a Down. There was bands like not so much rap bands, but there was like sort of pop punky bands like Green Day, Bowling for Soup. They were okay. Slipknot, of course. Slipknot were amazing. And so that's sort of where the teenage years came from with the heavy metal music, and then moving on, sort of early teens, early 20s, blues music. That's sort of completed the circle. I was about 19, and I was just, you have these Spotify playlists, and just sort of randomly going through the what's the word I'm looking for? Because it's a playlist, so you're skipping. There you go, skipping music. And I'd listened to a song by Robert Johnson. I've never heard of Robert Johnson in my life. Didn't know who he was. Didn't know anything about him. And I'm one for finding the history. I really enjoy history of music, especially when it comes to all forms. I've researched history of music a great deal from all different types of genres that I enjoy. And when blues came around, that was the most mystical to me. You had, like I say, Robert Johnson and his really his undocumented life, really cool. Really, I was really interested in that. I was like, oh, what's this about? So I was watching that, trying to find anything I could, and there was very little. And then I discovered artists like Blind Leonard Jefferson. He was like one of the original guys, and there was the Mississippi Sheiks, came on a bit later. Son House, of course, Son House, Sam Chapton. There was Blind Billy McTail. And then moving on to sort of more modernish style, well, modern for their time, B.B. King, of course, Albert King and Freddie King. And then you had guys like, in that same time period, you had Howlin' Wolf. Howlin' Wolf was a really good one. So yeah, and that's sort of that's the three main genres. I mean, there's the splinter genres of the genres. So going back to hip hop and rap music, for me, like I said at the start, like I'd listened to early sort of reggae and ska music, and then it was very easy for me to then move on to these other artists. And like I said, like NWA were really cool to me when I was younger. Cypress Hill were amazing. West Side Connection, of course, Ice Cube. And then there was obviously guys that were, Biggie and Tupac. But I wasn't the biggest fan of Biggie and Tupac. My mum actually really liked Tupac, and I was actually more of a Biggie fan. So it was quite interesting. Like we had quite a lot of a lot of strange conversations when I was about 7 years old. Like, oh no, I like this. No, this is better. So it was interesting. I don't think many parents have that type of conversation with their child. I don't know. My mum's just a bit different, but in a good way. Would never change that. But yeah, and there was so many. There's just so much. What I enjoyed about rap is there's many different styles. There's many different artists. There's many different people trying to say what they want to say. Tupac. Struggle in the streets. Grown. Very had a powerful message. Nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying that's that's what his style was. And then you had Biggie, the other side of it. Look at me, I've got lots of money. Drinking, getting the ladies, and that is a really interesting sort of comparison. And some people prefer listening to guys like Tupac, like I said, and then there's also guys that would be sort of on that side. Immortal Technique, Nas, The Game, DMX. Guys that are very, we must survive and we must struggle. And then on the other hand, you've got Biggie, you've got Jay-Z. You had guys like that, like guys that were, like Dr. Dre to an extent, like guys that were more sort of flashy, showing themselves off. And I really love the comparison in hip hop music. There is a divide, but it's a good divide. And of course, that's where beefs come in, and I love rap beefs as well. Some amazing rap beefs, guys. Things that I really enjoyed there. Between especially in the early days when you had the breakup of NWA and Ice Cube versus the other surviving members of NWA. The No Vaseline diss. And then you had the Biggie and Tupac obviously hit him up from Tupac's side, really strong, claiming to have done the nasty with Lil' Kim. Was it Lil' Kim? I'm sure it was Lil' Kim. Might be wrong. Well, Faith Evans. Oh, that wrong. And then West Side Connection and Cypress Hill, really good beefs there. And then at turn of the century, you had Nas and Jay-Z, really strong, really good for hip hop, and then of course from like 2000 to now, it's just been Eminem, and there's nothing wrong with that. He's a great rapper, and of course there's other beefs. I'm not going to just disregard, you know, other rappers who have had other beefs, but I think what Eminem brought to the industry really sort of completely changed the dynamics. So you had, the early days, the very early days. Of course, you had Coke La Rock, the original MC. Then him and DJ Kool Herc in the streets of the Bronx, and then that sort of really got into that, and then you had moving on from that, you had the Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, and then you had the Wu-Tang Clan were also involved, and then guys like that, and I think that sort of was all sort of basically not the same, but they were like evolutions of the genre. So Coke La Rock obviously never really had a song, but he was an MC. He was straight, on the club every night. ABC, listen to me, I'm the main MC. Blah blah blah. Like very very simple rap music. They just got the crowd going and just got the guys dancing and the girls dancing, and that's all that was. That's all it was. Ever in the earliest days, that's all it was supposed to be. And then as time grew on, and you had guys like DJ Hollywood, of course DJ Kool Herc, and then you had Africa Bambaataa from the Bronx, Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five, as I've said, and what was his name? Not LL Cool J. Well, yeah, LL Cool J, but young guys at that time just really bringing a different sort of flavour to it. And then in the late 80s, is when we had the very first proper, real, raw rap group, and in NWA, of course, they had in the Bronx, they had the sort of south side, east side sort of thing, and there was a bit of like, we're better than you, and this is why, and then they were like, no, we're better than you, and this is why, or we're fresher than you, and it was all very 80s and all very nice and all very, light jabs, and then the 90s came, and then it all went a bit crazy. With of course, then it got really a bit sad, obviously, with the deaths of Tupac and Biggie, and of course there was like the deaths of like other great artists like Big L and Big Pun as well. They could have been massive if they were around today, and then so for me, it was the start of everything that I enjoy in music. And I have a lot to contribute to hip hop. Heavy metal. So heavy metal. I guess, like I say, I got into the genre a bit later on in my teen years, and I think that's fine. I think most people do get into the genre, especially this genre, when they're in their teen years. Many parents don't have their kids listening to Black Sabbath at 5 years old. I mean, they could do, but yeah. And then again, I went through the history of metal. It's a bit more documented than certainly the blues, or indeed hip hop, because I think the media really sort of zeroed in on what heavy metal was, and of course the creators disputed in some aspects, but the creators, in my opinion, Black Sabbath. I mean, people say that there was that one band, Iron Butterfly, or whatever they were called. The Garden of Eden song. Fair enough. That was like the late 60s, and then you had Cream and all that, but they weren't heavy. They were just rock, which is still good. And then you had Jimi Hendrix, and you had like Janis Joplin and all them, but they were more sort of rocky, sort of bluesy, because that was the time period, the transition from the 60s to the 70s, and then Sabbath came in with their just crazy, heavy, angry brilliance, and then from then, this is what inspired the subgenres, and also the other types of heavy, the subgenres of heavy metal and what you had originally. And I think that's really interesting. I mean, of course, you have Sabbath, who started it all, and then AC/DC, Aerosmith, Led Zeppelin, bit different, and then later on in the sort of the 80s, you had the Big Four: Slayer, Metallica, Megadeth, and Anthrax. All great bands. Then you had, going into the 90s, it all sort of changed up a bit again, and I think that's really cool. So it started off as, you know, this sort of very original blues elemented rock to getting in, like, the style got more and more technical as it grew, and I think that's really cool. Like, so because of Sabbath, which have very very big power chords, and then, like, you know, the drums were very, and then it sort of got more and more. I don't know any of the terms. Got more and more technical as it grew. And there was different guitarists who were inspired by other guitarists who made different sounds. Like the guys like the Who were really cool. And then branching off into like punk, sort of faster music. Then you had, you know, then again in the 90s, and then you had like Korn and Slipknot, early Slipknot, and just so many bands. And I'm not gonna be, I'm not. This isn't like a history of music. This is just my history of music. So that's what I've done, and that's what I always do with music. And yeah, and then I sort of mellowed out a wee bit, and then I came into the blues. The blues, for me, like I say, I found them on it by accident almost. Robert Johnson. The song by Robert Johnson, I believe, was "Up Jump the Devil." "Up Jump Devil" was the first proper blues song I ever really listened to, and I just sort of went from there. Listened to the. I went from, it was weird. I went from Robert Johnson and then immediately went in to listen to BB King. So I went from one very very different style to like another very very different style. So I was hard. It took me a while to sort of get an idea of what I really enjoyed in the blues, because the blues is such a varied genres, just like heavy metal and to an extent hip hop. Um, Guys I really enjoy in the blues, of course, I've mentioned a couple already, but I done, as I said, I done the history into the blues, and I saw how it all sort of spun and how it all started. The original guy, and forgive me, I'm going to check Wikipedia just to make sure I'm getting this right, because it was what was his name? What was his name? What was his name? One of the original guys. Hold on. His name's lost on me, and it'll be here somewhere. If I remember, I will bring it up again in the in this video. But yeah, no, can't remember. But yeah, so I looked up the original guy, who I cannot just for the life of me pin his name, and also Blind Lemon Jefferson and Robert Johnson. And I didn't particularly enjoy a lot of Blind Lemon Jefferson songs. They were very basic and quite strange, very haunting, a very haunting voice. But and then moving on from there, Robert Johnson was very easy to listen to, and it was also the period of time when there was like a lot of hoodoo, black magic sort of traditions going on in the African American community at the time, and a lot of people sort of disregarded Johnson because of how he was. Like, nobody played music this quickly before, and this was the 30s, man. So he could strum a guitar very quickly, and a lot of people were like, "That's the devil's music," you know. He shouldn't be doing that. That's very anti-Christian and whatever. And fair enough. Back in those days, you know, you could still do something relatively normal and get in a lot of trouble for it. So yeah, and then of course we moved on to the more sort of modern-ish type blues artists, like I say, BB King, Freddie King, Albert King, the Kings, guys like Joe Bonamassa. I really enjoy Joe Bonamassa. I've got him on Instagram. I mean, I don't have him as in like he's my friend or whatever, but I follow him, and I really like him. And Beth Hart, Bonnie Raitt, sorry, not Beth Hart, Bonnie Raitt. She's really cool too. The thing with blues is that I'm still, even though I've listened to it for a long time, I'm still very, very, very basic in the blues. Like, I can't tell you who's who, aside from like the big guys, and I do feel a lot of bit sort of, you know, bit of a poser in that sense. Like, I don't mean to be. It's just that there's so much to listen to, and I already listen to so much. So I mean, I think that I'm just trying to answer the question to the person who originally messaged me, like, what what do you actually listen to? And this is a very very brief video, in my opinion. I mean, we're in 20 minutes now, but I mean, for me, this is such a small time. I mean, I could go on for hours, and I probably will at some point. I could do like a live stream or something, take questions from people. I think that's probably the easiest way to do this because it saves me from rambling on. Rambling on. That's a Led Zeppelin song, or is it Aerosmith? No, it's Led Zeppelin. But yeah, I mean, if anyone wants to actually ask me any questions specifically about what I enjoy or what I enjoy listening to, or has any music questions related, I can answer them. I mean, this is not a music channel. I'm not, saying that this is something that I want this channel to go down just completely music. But I mean, if somebody's got a question, then I'm going to answer it. Probably should have said that at the start of the video because I don't think anyone's going to be watching it to this point. And if anyone does watch to this point, then I'm very grateful. It will definitely get my viewing numbers up. We hit over 100 public watch hours as well, which is really cool. So yeah, so that's just a very, very brief, very small dent in the type of music that I listen to. Hope that was helpful to the guy who asked me, or girl. I'm not saying it was because it was anonymous. But yeah, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you are, and see you in the next one. Cheers.